Edward Russell Thomas, born 1875, dying 1926, was an American businessman and sportsman of the Gilded Age. He was also a menace of the time, considered to behave with such poor manners his example would serve etiquette writer Emily Post in later years. Edward was born in Columbus, Ohio. He was a son of Anne Augusta, née Porter Thomas, and Union Army General Samuel Russell Thomas, who left a fortune estimated at $20 million, over $350 million today, mostly in Ohio and Tennessee mining and railroad industries upon his death in 1903. At that time, Thomas was 28 years old and the eldest brother of the family. Thomasville, Alabama, is named after Union General Thomas. Edward's younger sister, Eleanor Thomas, was married to Robert Livingston Beekman, who served as the governor of Rhode Island from 1915 to 1921. Eleanor seems to be the only child her parents approved of. Harold Edgell Thomas was the middle child, who became a physician and married a widow, Ada Bland, to his father's dismay. Samuel Russell Thomas's executors were instructed to invest $100,000, equivalent to almost $3.5 million today, and pay the income to his son Harold because in his will Thomas stated, "I make no further provision for my son Harold because his condition, mentally and physically, is such that he is incapable of managing his own affairs." But upon his widow's death in 1944, she left her estate to the same son, Dr. Thomas, and not to her late son Edward's children, Samuel and Lucetta, because, in my opinion, each of them is adequately provided for financially. Edward Thomas graduated from Yale University in 1894. He then became a senior member of Thomas and Thomas, a Wall Street firm located at 71 Broadway. But it would be the chorus girls of Broadway that would attract him far more than wise investments. Let's learn more about Thomas's role in New York City with an excerpt from Laura Claridge's Emily Post. Edwin Post had gone into business with the disreputable cad E.R. Thomas, the louche head of the newly opened Thomas and Post banking offices. Hearing that Edwin Post had teamed up with Thomas could not have pleased Emily Post's parents. It was well known Thomas had an indulgent multimillionaire father who lavishly endowed his son's pleasures, fast actresses, and even faster cars. A notorious playboy, Thomas quickly replaced his first wife, the Post's friend Linda Lee, a Southern belle like Emily, with a succession of minor stage stars. Thomas's misdeeds took their toll on more than his marriage. During the years Edwin Post worked with him, his partner's infamous driving killed 2 people, including a child, in separate accidents. After being granted legal immunity on one flimsy excuse funded by his family money after another, Thomas would be forced to pause. One day, his 120-horsepower Hotchkiss Vanderbilt Cup racer couldn't stop in time for the horse carriage in his path. Horses went flying, the passengers lucky to get away with their lives, even if the animals didn't. Impatient as ever during this recuperation, Thomas fled the New York hospital early and went south, where he believed the tonic of Southern friends would help him heal faster. This was the man Edwin Post decided to partner with in 1898. In 1904, Thomas acquired the New York Morning Telegraph from the estate of William Collins Whitney. This was a common move among the young Gilded Age. Newspapers could push certain company advertisements and political opinions. California powerhouse William Randolph Hearst exemplified this. and you can learn more about him on this channel. In October 1905, board vacancies of Consolidated National Bank were filled by Thomas, O.F. Thomas, Robert McClay, and George B. Hayes, all of whom were personally selected by Thomas himself. Thomas sold his interest in the Consolidated National Bank just 2 years later, in 1907, also resigning from his positions, potentially due to losing money. Thomas was a member of the Union Club of the City of New York. In June 1901, when he was 26, he married 17-year-old Linda Lee Thomas, a member of the prominent Lee family of Virginia at Newport, Rhode Island. Linda, who was known as one of the country's most beautiful women, was introduced to Thomas by friends. Oddly, these friends seemed to want to betray Linda's Southern roots, and introduced her to Thomas, who was the son of Union Army General Samuel Thomas. Linda's father was Louisville banker William Paca Lee, and her mother was Lily Lee, née Hill, which is another prominent Southern family. After the 1901 marriage, the two lived a life of luxury, with houses in Palm Beach, Manhattan, and Newport. It was said Linda's favorite department store was jeweler Van Cleef and Arpels, and you can learn more about their baubles in the Thailand Royal Jewelry video on this channel. Linda was painted as the Lady in Blue in 1906 by Emile Fuchs, and this portrait hangs in the Brooklyn Museum. They divorced in October 1912, supposedly due to his abuse. Linda and Cole Porter, 8 years her junior, met in January 1918 at the wedding of Henry Potter Russell to heiress Ethel Borden Harriman at the Hotel Ritz Paris. Porter, like Thomas, was a Yale graduate and the son of a Midwestern multimillionaire father. It's possible Cole Porter was related to Linda's first husband's mother. In 1915, Porter's first song on Broadway, Esmeralda, appeared in the revue Hands Up. The quick success was immediately followed by failure. His first Broadway production in 1916, See America First, a patriotic comic opera modeled on Gilbert and Sullivan's works, was a flop. Porter spent the next year in New York City before going overseas during World War I. When Linda met Porter, he was returning to his modern Paris apartment, full of gay and lesbian couples, after serving in North Africa during World War I. Linda was attractive and well-connected socially. The couple shared mutual interests, including a love of travel, and she became Porter's confidant and companion. She was in no doubt about her future husband's homosexuality, but it was mutually advantageous for them to marry. For Linda, it offered continued social status and a partner who would never hurt her like her abusive first husband. For Porter, it brought a respectable heterosexual front. They were genuinely devoted to each other and remained married from December 1919 until her death in 1954. Linda remained protective of her social position and, believing classical music might be a more prestigious outlet than Broadway for her husband's talents, tried to use her connections to find him suitable teachers, including Igor Stravinsky, but she was unsuccessful. You can learn more about Cole Porter's world in the Ziegfeld Girls playlist on this channel. In 1912, on the day Linda Lee obtained her final divorce decree, Thomas married Elizabeth Finley, a daughter of Henry Finley of New York City, potentially related to the Finley-Morse family, who developed Morse code. All of these interconnections show how small America truly was before our borders were opened and we were flooded by immigrants. Before their 1924 divorce in Florida, Thomas and Elizabeth were the parents of one son together, Samuel Finley Thomas, who was born in Paris in 1913 and became a medical doctor like his uncle. Samuel, the ominously called Duke of Death, received a Bachelor of Arts degree from Princeton in 1935. He then received a doctorate of medicine from Columbia University in 1940. He specialized in neurology and psychiatry in New York City from 1946 until 1976. He was a staff member of the Neurology Institute of New York City and attending neurology of such institute until 1980. He was also a consultant emeritus until his death and a clinical professor of neurology. He served as a doctor at St. Luke's Hospital in New York City from 1946 until 1980 and attending physician of neurology from 1955 to 1980, as well as attending psychiatrist until his death. He was a member of various medical associations, including the American Medical Association, the New York County Medical Association, and the American Psychiatric Association. It's possible he was responsible for reserving various spots in New York City sanatoriums for his father during his father's 3-day illness before he died. Samuel served as a major in the Medical Corps of the United States Army Air Force during World War II. He was an avid mountain climber and a lifetime member of the Wasatch Mountain Club and the American Alpine Club. His wife Ruth lived until 2003. In 1924, Thomas married actress Lucy Cotton, the daughter of Adelaide Wisby Cotton, who was born in Houston. She was 20 years his junior. She was 29 and he was 49 at the time of their marriage. Lucy left Houston, Texas, for New York City in her teens and found her first role on Broadway in the chorus of The Quaker Girl. In 1915, Lucy appeared on stage in Polygamy at the Park Theater in New York City. She then starred in the 1919 production of Up in Mabel's Room, while also starring in various silent films, many of which remain lost. She was an actress when Thomas likely spotted her on Broadway and married her, but it's possible such a performance was on film. Lucy starred in such silents as The Devil of 1921 and The Sin That Was His of 1920. Their marriage lasted 2 years before he died, leaving her a fortune of $27 million. Together they lived at 320 Park Avenue and were the parents of one daughter, Lucetta Cotton Thomas, born in 1925, who changed her name to Mary Frances Thomas, perhaps due to the shame from her mother. Mary married Kenneth Oscar Bailey in 1950, but supposedly they divorced in 1955. The Baileys moved to Virginia, where they established a dairy farm in the Shenandoah Valley. Third wife, Lucy Cotton, steadily wasted the $27 million worked up by generations of Thomases by marrying and divorcing Lytton Gray Ament from 1927 to 1930, lawyer Charles Hahn Jr. from 1931 to 1932, William McGraw, president of Manhattan's Underground Installations Company from 1932 to 1941, and Georgian-Russian Prince Vladimir Arastavy-Checherin when they married in 1941 at a Russian Orthodox church in New York City. She died in 1948, supposedly after taking fatal sleeping tablets. Thomas himself died after a 3-day illness at the Harbor Sanitarium in New York City in July 1926. His legacy remains scattered, although he is known as the first millionaire to mow down a pedestrian in his car. Thomas was buried at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery in Sleepy Hollow, New York. His daughter, Mary, not his son, inherited what was left of Thomas's fortune.